All right. So tonight, my guest is Ryan. I've been knowing Ryan since he was a little kid. We were mutual friends of mine. I've been knowing since I was almost like 13, at least Jose since 13. I knew Eric in high school and Neve and then Gerald. So Jose and Eric, they did martial arts. They did White Crane, and their sensei had a dojo at his home. And along with that dojo and his home was his son, Ryan, that would be running around
Yeah,
all the
annoying
time.
the shit out of everyone.
I always thought it was kind of cool because one, he was in the class, learning as well, but then also just kind of hanging out and stuff. So that definitely showed that he didn't mind being around older folks for one, and then also, curious about what his dad did, be it partly probably forced maybe, and then a little bit of force and a little bit of personal interest.
Mix and match.
Yeah. So I thought that was really, really dope. So he's the youngest one of our crew. It's just great to have him and have his perspective. And one of the things that he's very well versed on, which always trips me out, one, because this subject was out way before he was even around. And matter of fact, it was out around the time that I was around, but I was on the young side, so I didn't even really connect to it as much as a lot of friends of mine that's slightly older does. Actually, my, future of choice was Star Trek, and that was only due to me watching Star Trek with my dad. So that was always kind of my bag, even though I have a love for Star Wars. Mine was more Star Trek. But as I got older and watched the movies and things like that, I did have a connection, but I do feel like I didn't connect to it the same, only because I didn't see those in the movie theater. And sometimes that kind of stuff helps you to connect to it, and then your age and stuff like that. So it trips me out that this dude is even younger than I am. And you talk about connection to the lore, and then the knowledge of all the history and things like that. I'm a geek, and I like geek stuff. So when you come across
you gotta blame it on VHS, because that's what it is. Like, I was born in '80, so I missed all the movies. Like, what Return of the Jedi was like, I think '83 or something like that. I did not catch any of them in the theaters, but clearly my parents either bought, and I'm pretty sure, what was it? The first one, A New Hope, was on VHS and recorded on VHS. Like, my dad recorded it either off a tape or somehow it was on TV or something. So I swear to God, I distinctly remember it's early in the movie when like the sand people are like, oh, we see Luke, we're gonna go after him, and they go jump on the bantha, and there's a glitch, and it like starts playing like a segment of a car commercial and then just cuts off. And I don't know if like dad was like sitting there like, oh, commercial, damn it, I missed it, or he was recording over whatever, but I had him on VHS, and that's how I internalized Star Wars growing up.
Wow. So your dad was into Star Wars and stuff like that?
That is an interesting question, because like clearly I nerded out way harder on Star Wars. I think like my dad was never like, oh, what's this? Mm-hmm. So he was never like poo-pooing on Star Wars. Right. But he had other things that he was like super into. Like, I remember he had VHSs of Spencer, Private Detective, that he fucking
Spencer for Hire.
Yeah, Spencer for Hire.
Yeah, I love that
Hawk.
Show. Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Spencer.
Right?
Yeah.
Future Captain Sisko.
Sisko, exactly. Deep Space Nine.
So my dad wasn't a fellow Star Wars nerd, but I think he was like, oh, this seems cool, I'll record it. Maybe the kid will like it. So I don't know. I've never asked him. I like the earliest story about my enthusiasm, and I was, I don't know, 4 or 5, something like that. We were still living at our old place, and I had like Luke Skywalker's green lightsaber. It's all made out of plastic and stuff, and my dad does martial arts. He's doing a Tai Chi form in the backyard with an actual fucking sword, and I'm like, hey Dad, let's sword fight. And I'm swinging it around, and he's like, kiddo, I'd cut your sword in half if we did that. And I was like, oh. He loves telling that fucking story. So clearly it got into me early.
Yeah. So what things about it you think that that you gravitated to? What do you think that caught you about it?
Well, I think like a lot of things, it changed over time. Right? Like the depth of what you can appreciate as a kid with your limited context.
Right.
It's like, hey, cool explosions. Hey, laser swords, big battles, boom, boom, boom. Like you probably get into it at that sort of kid level, which is totally fine. But like as I got older, like you can start to see more of the layers, and it goes from liking Luke Skywalker because he's probably the protagonist, and you know it's the hero's journey, so you kind of focus on him. He's got these cool powers, and he's got a laser sword, and it's like at some point, I think maybe high school or early college was like, oh wait, Luke's kind of been a weird role model as well, because it's like, especially at Return of the Jedi, like literally at the end, he doesn't win through violence. Right. He doesn't win in any sort of combat sense at all. Yeah, he beats his dad, but then he's like, oh fuck, right, okay, I'm just gonna turn into my dad, and he throws his lightsaber away. Right. He, at least in that context, rejects violence. In all the extended books, he, you know, picks up the lightsaber again, but for that, it's like, you know, I'm not going to choose violence. I'm going to show restraint.
Yeah.
And certainly for someone who used to get bullied, that was kind of an important thing that I don't know if I picked up directly, because like I think I was a little bit younger where I had that moment where I was like, oh shit, I'm bullying someone else. I'm just okay, I'm gonna stop. Like I hate it when people do that to me, so right, I'm going to try to not do that to other people. So
that's pretty deep that you were able to self-recognize. A lot of people walk around not knowing. So
yeah, I count myself as lucky for that, because otherwise, you know, you're just spreading the harm around other people. But yeah, over time, Star Wars provided different things, in part because you can go back and appreciate different parts of the movies, and it's like as you get older, you're like, oh, I get why Han's cool now, right? Things like that. Like, I mean, it's the original trilogy. Phantom Menace has some amazing spectacle, the fight scenes, not just like the melee combat with the lightsabers, but the space combat, holy crap, still some of the best in cinema. But then there's also all the books that I read. Holy crap, so many.
That's funny. I think a great point that you made as far as like going back and stuff, because I think when people think about like people who love movies and music and stuff, I don't think that they think about the well that it is that you do return to, especially the ones that catch you for one thing. You know, that's all it takes, because what you might be going for is not what you leave with, and you could keep going back. Like you say, you get older and you recognize something else, or something else catch you the right way, and a joke that was over your head, you laugh at it every time now because now you get it. You had to have some experience before you revisit the movie again, and with that experience make you have a different kind of connection and different eyes for it. So I think it's a great point that you made about that.
Well, I think even like in college, like one of the things that was, aside from my attempt to make a Star Wars fan film, one of the cool things, we'll get to that. So one of the things was like, I obviously was into film. Like I was doing a multimedia degree, but I had a whole bunch of friends like down the bay at San Jose State in the actual film department. And so I was actually just driving down to San Jose and working on short film projects with them for effing years, even after college.
Wow.
And so if you're immersing yourself in cinema, well, you look to the greats, which maybe isn't necessarily George Lucas, but you realize, oh, wait, him, Steven Spielberg, Francis Ford Coppola, like they're all film buddies. Right?
Yeah.
And they all went to, and they all loved Akira Kurosawa. And it's like, oh, cool. Okay, so let's look at that. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. And eventually down the road, you're like, oh, Lucas was ripping off some heavy stuff, not just from Kurosawa in particular, but like origin of the word comes from a Japanese film genre.
Wow.
Like for their basically sort of period pieces, which are usually involving samurai, is something along the lines of, I'm going to try not to butcher it from memory, Jedi Geki.
Okay.
Right? Where like Geki's film and Jedi's like period. So George just like, oh, Jedi, yoink.
Wow.
because the Jedi were a mix of cowboy and samurai. So like
Right.
there's all these layers of like peeling things apart, like as much as at a certain point Lucas was reviled after the prequels. Everyone was like, oh, at a certain
Right.
point they're like, oh, there's all these problems with it. But it's like, dude, that guy put a lot of fucking effort in. A
He,
lot of effort.
He did, and it's funny that you mentioned that, because I was going to ask you your thoughts on the prequel. But before that, I was also wondering, what did you think about? Because like George Lucas is like notoriously known for going back and kind of tweaking with the magic more than a few times. So it's all these different kind of edits and stuff, and then different kind of cuts and stuff, and then some cuts are no longer available. How do you feel about that? About him going back and touching? It's his art, I guess, and he could do what he wants to. But then it's also, we all feel like it's kind of ours too, because we had it a certain kind of way, and you want that birthday cake that tastes like the birthday cake you had when you were a kid.
Right.
You don't want the recipe to be different. It might be better, but I want the cake that I knew when I was 5 years old. I want my mom to make that cake again, not a new cake.
I got mixed feelings about a lot of these things that people get understandably upset about.
Right.
Mixed feelings about the reaction to the upsetness.
Okay.
But like, I get people being like, oh man, I liked this interpretation. I don't like, why did you make that change?
Right.
But there's also people who are like, oh, I like that change. No, that's better. That works better. I get it now. It blah, 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 blah. I mean, and this is ignoring the small technical special effects fixes, actual fixes that they made. Not like we're going to insert new stuff or remove new stuff. We're just going to clean up a special effect.
Yeah.
Like that sort of stuff I don't care about. But
what about the stormtrooper bumping his head when they fixed that? Did you mind that being fixed, or you?
I don't care.
Okay.
Like it's one of those things where, like, I think prior to the internet, most of it didn't notice all those Easter eggs and stuff. True. Like True. I didn't know about it. Yeah. Like it was probably the mid-aughts until I saw an article like, hey, the guy bumped his head. Isn't that funny? They missed that. Oh, continuity error. Like that's it's cute.
Yeah.
But it also is not meaningful.
Yeah, true.
Right? Now, the meaningful ones, there's definitely a category of meaningful changes. And I'm not talking about like extended scenes of Tatooine, right? Where they're driving in and you see the wider city. Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
I could see people kind of like doing a double take when at the end of Return of the Jedi, when you see Yoda and Obi-Wan and Anakin's Force ghosts. In the original, it was old man Anakin, right? That we had seen for what? A minute? Right? Took his helmet off. Vader becomes Anakin. And he went back and put Hayden Christensen in after they did the prequels. I don't fucking care.
Okay.
The interesting thing is they could have left it as it is, and it would have been all right. So that's old Anakin. But it actually does make more sense that it's the Hayden Christensen version, because that was the last time he saw himself, right? I mean, unless they're like, hey, before we put you in the Vader suit, do you want to look at your burned remains?
Right.
And it's also reflecting his return to an earlier self.
His innocent self.
Right.
Quote unquote.
Let's be clear, Anakin.
I know. Quote unquote.
Quote unquote. But yeah, he's giving up the Vader persona. So, all right. Director cuts, director edits, whether it's Lucas or whoever it was, Blade Runner, I can't remember right now. You know, the director cut of that, adding the unicorn origami, not doing it, the dream sequence. Like, it would be nice if they left the other prior versions, but
No, that's fair.
I grant people being upset about it, because it's like, that was that one thing that I really cared about. It's like,
yeah. No, that's just.
I wish I could have a more hot take, but that's very much a cool take on people being upset about their things being changed, because yeah, there's a lot of that in fiction.
Yeah, it is. And I think unjust, because I don't know. I guess maybe they haven't hit anything that I felt a ways about yet, I guess. Because part of me can understand, but not to the point of like bullying and just all the stuff that's kind of happening on social media about certain things and people's feelings about it. It's like I I'll watch like sci-fi or a superhero movie or cartoons, whatever, like, before I would watch sports even. And when stuff happens and change, I kind of just like either it's for me or not, but I still had what I had. So I'm never really that been out of shape enough to go out my front door and scream to a neighborhood like, you killed my childhood. I just never, and I love it deep, but not to that extent.
Yeah. Well, for people that are heavily attached to their secondary worlds, right?
Mm-hmm.
All these different fictional universes are all secondary worlds, right? We're in the real world, unless it's a simulation.
Allegedly.
Right?
Quote unquote.
But I get this, they want to really believe in the validity of the secondary world. Not to the extent where they're like schizophrenic or anything like that, but just like they don't want the verisimilitude of its reality broken. Right? As someone that plays and runs tabletop games like D&D, I get that, right? Players don't want to see behind the screen and realize, oh yeah, this whole goddamn thing's fake, but it's not real. Like, sorry. Like, people need to chill. Like, we have the same problem with freaking comic books because, we're both comic book nerds. Like, we have this same problem all the goddamn time. And it's even worse in comics because you've got this massive trove of continuity, right? And it's like, the thing is, people get pissed off about that thing from that continuity that they love, can't be changed. But as you look at the rest of the continuity that they have, or maybe even haven't consumed, and they're just chucking that out.
Right.
Like, what was it? Peter Parker, Spider-Man, there's the clone saga.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right? Which is multiple clones here and there and da-da-da. And basically the writers, for the most part, are like, oh, we'll keep the one clone. He can come back.
Yeah, Ben.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, Ben Reilly.
But as someone who consumed a big chunk of that, I also just like, yeah, that's all I need to keep. I don't care about the rest of the continuity. I can barely remember that. It was the Jackal, like, there's so much that I've just ejected. And it's the same thing for Star Wars with the, I don't want to say 100, but dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of books that I've read. There's just stuff that doesn't matter to me. Right. So, and there's stuff that I think is stupid, and stuff that I think is fucking awesome. And the hilarious thing now is it doesn't fucking matter because it's all the legacy canon. Disney was like, yeah, no, all the books, nope, we're just tracking the movies and specific animated TV shows. That's it.
Right. So do you agree with their choices for the stuff that they consider that they let in versus the stuff that they say is not canon? Because it doesn't make what you know, because you kind of check it all out. So it's not like just because they say it don't exist don't mean you don't know it.
Right.
So
I know it. I can carry that particular canon on. I think there's a term like head canon where it's just like your personal interpretation of this weird thing. It's like no one says it's not that. So I'm just gonna fan theory that boom, head canon. So I can still hold on to that canon. It's just like a separate timeline or whatever. Yeah. But I don't think. I think when Disney, presumably the creatives, not necessarily the executives, but I like to think the creatives were pushing this decision point because as a creative to step into that massive continuity, it's the same problem with Star Trek, is like, oh, this continuity is great and amazing and thoughtful and filled out, and it totally ties my hands of what I can do. Right? Doesn't matter if it's a piece of sci-fi technology or some sort of magic, which you've got both in sci-fi, and how they work and why they work. A lot of times those restrain the story you're trying to tell in the moment. Right? So allow me to bitch about The Mandalorian.
Go for it.
So love The Mandalorian. Me too. But, there's weird technology continuity things where it's like, why would you do that? Oh, it's like, oh, you did it for a story beat. You did it for a story beat. You did it for a story reason, and it makes no fucking sense outside of that context. Like, it changes the way the world works. So, Mandalorian season 1, episode 1, Mando gets his new bounty that is going to lead him, spoilers, to Baby Yoda. If you're out of luck on that spoiler, too bad. Now, they could have just gone and said, like, here's a holo picture of Baby Yoda. This is your target. And Mando would have just said, no kids. Yeah. Boom, end of show. Yeah. Right? And that's the problem. He would have realized what the target was, and it would have been against his personal little code because he was a foundling and all. No, right? You can't have that dramatic reveal. So they're like, all right, well, we need some other way for him to find the target, but not know what the target looks like. Oh, we'll give him a key fob. We'll give him a tiny little puck, a key fob that'll track Grogu, Baby Yoda. So it works out fine, But it's like, okay, so there's a tracking device. No, there's no tracking device on him because it comes up later that he's still being tracked. He's on another planet. Another bounty hunter shows up. And again, it's to serve a story beat. It could have been that little hand puck only works on that planet. Maybe it does. It's always, it's like, well, how does it work? It served a purpose on the other planet of, I can't stay here with these nice villagers and settle down. That's what it was. Because I have this obligation to the kid. I can't stay here. Lone wolf and cub, right? But that means that bounty hunter got one of those pucks somewhere that is somehow tracking Baby Yoda and either just randomly flew to that planet and was like, oh, hey, this key fob's lighting up. I'm going to go follow it, and gets shot. Or he picked up the key fob in the same place that Mando did and then followed it through hyperspace, the vastness of the galaxy, down to that planet and then down to the... I was like, wait a fucking minute. Yeah. How did Luke, how did Han, how did anyone not get caught? Right? Right. So it's just one of the things like, how the hell is that goddamn word? It doesn't make any damn sense. Yeah. So, yeah, they had a similar thing the episode later where they do the jailbreak, and there's a key fob that, like, the pilot of the prison ship has a key fob, and it hits the key fob and sends out a distress signal. I'm like, oh, okay, so the key fob sent a signal to the ship he's on, and the ship is broadcasting an SOS. The Republic's going to come and save the day. Right. But because they wanted to serve a story beat of Mando's clever, and he is, he takes this little key fob and he sticks it into the back pocket of one of the people that just betrayed him, and they fly back to their base somewhere else in space, and the Republic goes there. So they're following the key fob. They're not coming to the prison ship. So it's like, wait, this tiny key fob is sending out a distress signal that goes through hyperspace. And I'm just like, I don't know. Maybe they're in the same region of space, but Star Wars is horrible at laying out distances, whatever. But my point is that those served story purposes, narrative purposes, character beats. Right. But they didn't think about the implications of how that works in the wider world. All right. And we saw that also in The Last Jedi, which has lots of other problems. But it's that big dramatic moment where General What's-Her-Face, Laura Dern, turns the ship around and hyperspace rams into the fleet. It was like,
that
oh,
was
shit.
Dope.
Right? That visually dope.
Yeah.
Like, I'm also a sucker for the sacrifice move. Like, that always works on me.
Captain going down with the ship, just like...
Man, sucker for that trope. Like, emotionally it worked. But literally, like, a second later, my brain was like, oh, fuck, why isn't no one else doing that? Because that's the thing. Like, wait, if you just hyperspace ram ships, why don't you just build a ship with no one in it and just hyperspace ram it into whatever you want?
Yeah. Or use drones.
Right.
Or use droids.
Right.
Or use clones. You have a lot of expendable characters that you could use.
and the thing is, so there might be lots of exemptions, asterisks around that particular thing, like why it can't be used all the time, blah, blah, blah. But, they're not serving that world building purpose. They're like, have the moment, move on. Yeah. because there was, to talk shit about some of the legacy stuff, there was a whole trilogy of books where a clone of the Emperor came back and built a fucking hyperspace gun that did exactly that.
Oh.
It was like what, the center of the galaxy, Abyss or something like that. Big it's basically another Death Star. It's another super weapon.
Right.
And it did the exact same thing, but it would take out planets. It would shoot giant planet killers through hyperspace that no one could stop.
So was that considered canon, or you said no, it's not?
It is in legacy canon, so it was part of the books. Okay. Like I have a graphic novel of the, interpretation of that trilogy. But it's been like a couple decades since I read it, and I'm sure they were like, well, you have to build this giant star killer base thing to make it work, and it's not like a ship can do that, right? So they put some constraints on it, but again, it's like, please think about how your story beats going to affect the world building, and that's only because I'm one of those people that give a shit about these secondary worlds. Right? Because it's not going to be just for this moment, right? This film, this character arc. It's like, no, it's part of this larger and that's why people get pissed off when someone retcons Superman's power set. Right. Superman's made out of energy now. What?
Right.
Superman can go supernova, but then he's depleted for a whole day. I'm like, oh, okay, well, at least there's a consequence there that makes it where he's not just ridiculously more powerful, he actually gets weaker.
Yeah, because even though I understand exactly what you're saying, and I feel that way, but it's a trip too. It's kind of like you prefer for them to be holding to the legacy and the stories and things like that, but then you're also assuming the people who's working on it have a love for it, to even know the continuity, and even with that, if it's in a different medium, or if it's stuff that you may know, like from a book or something, but people who only watch the, the Clone Wars, or only watch the original movies and stuff like that. So it's kind of like all over the place. And it would just be, I think the only person that really would be able to, well, I guess Kevin Feige kind of does it in a way, even though he's not doing exactly like the comics. He at least he has a big picture, and he could kind of rein stuff back when he sees like, don't do this because it's gonna affect that, and a big picture guy. But
he's got the high level stuff.
Right. And it's interesting because George Lucas was that for Star Wars, and then people, kind of gave him a hard time with it with the prequels, which I thought was kind of like, now people may have issues with it, but that's that guy's world. That's kind of like saying, God was just like saying like God was wrong. Well, no, if God's saying this, regardless if you like it or not, that's what it is. And so I think it's ironic that people had issues with that, almost kind of ran them off in a way, and then it's like, well, give it to somebody else. And when they did, look what we got. And I don't see people complaining about those prequels anymore like they were before, after they saw what happens when the next door neighbor takes care of the kid.
Right. And it was funny because I was looking up like something about Rian Johnson the other day with like, was it The Last Jedi? And he had an interview where someone was like asking about him sort of like pushing sort of some of the boundaries and how the Force worked and this and that. And he's like, okay, well, one, like everyone that came before me was doing the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. George Lucas did that because he was creating all this sort of stuff. I'm another creator pushing the boundaries of what can be applicable and what's not applicable and all that sort of stuff. I'm like, that's kind of a valid point. And these other things, like, what am I going to be stuck with? Something that was written 30 years ago, right? Like for the story I'm trying to tell. And it's like, I kind of yeah. See, the thing is like, where's that threshold, right? Someone comes in, writes a new Superman story, and there's all these different data points about what is Superman. Yes. And if he gets 70%, does he get 80% of it right? Yeah. If he gets 50%, people are going to fucking riot, right? So it's like, how much are you changing? And as much as, we shit on Rian Johnson for Last Jedi, dude, oh God, I already forgot his name. Who directed the other two movies on either side? Mr. Mystery Box Boy.
J.J. Abrams.
Yeah, J.J., thank you. Mm-hmm. Mr. Lens Flare. Mm-hmm. So in the previous movie, The Force Awakens, he came up with an entirely new force power.
Yeah.
Right? Boom, frozen in place. You can't move. I'm going to hold that laser bolt in place. And like everyone was like, oh, it's fucking cool. And it's like, well, he also broke a rule. He made a new thing, right? He didn't retcon a thing, right? Which is hilarious because he retconned Rian Johnson after Rian Johnson subverted expectations, not necessarily retcon stuff, but it's, yeah. I'm a bit more forgiving now because like in my side hobby as someone that runs like tabletop games like D&D is like I'm the George Lucas, right? So I'm trying to figure out my continuity and keep that all straight. And you can do, specifically in Dungeons and Dragons, you can go and say, all right, here's a setting book, here's Faerun, the classic setting, here's a giant continent-wide map, that city's there and that city's there, blah 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 and blah blah blah. And you can go, all right, I'm going to accept 80% of that. Or you can go, I'm going to accept the basic concept of Fantasyland and write my own thing, right? So it's what restraints. And your players may come in and be like, oh, no, I'm expecting Faerun. And you're like, we're not doing Faerun. We're doing a different thing. Oh, well, I'm expecting, this magic to work this way. And like, I tweaked it. It's actually different. And at least between a dungeon master and a player, you can have that conversation, but it's totally separate from most other medium where it's like, I've made a thing, please don't throw rotten fruit at me. Right.
But the thing about that is like, it's a brand, and a brand is an identity. A brand is, it's like if you're playing in a designated area, it's the borders, right? You got the walls. The brand has the walls. It only goes like 20 feet out each side. It's a square. The weapon of choice, whatever, or the tools you have at hand is like a baseball bat and a baseball, right? And you have the certain set rules. Now, granted, somebody might want to, add a football to the game, but that's not what the brand is. And so I think there is a thing where if it's a brand, then, like Mickey should have 2 ears, not 3. Batman's parents were killed in Crime Alley. Just certain things. And depending on the IP, you might have all these things, and you just kind of work around it in a way because you kind of messing with people's expectations, and even though it might be old to you because you've seen it a million times,
right?
That's why they're coming back. It's for that same thing. If they're looking for something new, they would go to a different property. So I understand that there could be some wiggle room within that, game or within those borders and stuff. But I think that, like you said, it's a percentage that you could just cross that line. And it's almost like, what is this?
Right. And there's different ways of crossing those lines. There's like, who is this character type lines, right? Who is Superman? Who is Luke Skywalker? Who is, whoever. That is a specific character. Granted, something like Superman or Peter Parker or Spider-Man, like there's tons of different iterations on that character, but they fit into sort of a box. Some jump out of them from time to time.
Right.
But for how things work, that's totally different, right? How does the Force work? How does hyperspace work? How does this work? How does that work? That affects the whole goddamn world.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, going back to MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, like once they introduced Doctor Strange and his little teleportation circles,
right?
Well, fuck, we can all use the teleportation circles as long as it's a character that knows how to use it. So that's why you can get Wong using that in Shang-Chi, right? Like, hey, there's Wong, boom, he does a teleport, right? Like it's set up now, it's part of the world. And that will work as expected until someone changes the way that it works, right? Explain in a new way, right? Like rewriting Wanda's sort of ability set, right? It's a light retcon because you're expanding on what it does and how it can be used. But that's different from, oh, no, they never worked like that. Wait, what? What? Right? If you're like, oh, it's actually this, and it's always been that. Those work so damn well. Like, so when they rebooted Green Lantern, right? Sorry if you don't know Green Lantern, I'm going to go on a rant here. So, back in the late 90s, comics were extreme. So they killed Superman. They did all sorts of crazy stuff. As part of that, Hal Jordan, Mr. Green Lantern, got his home city wrecked, like wiped off the face of the map, nuclear explosion. And that, kind of sent him over the edge a little bit. So he decided, I'm going to go back and get all the Green Lantern rings and the power of Oa, blah, 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 so I can resurrect my city. So he goes back and slaughters a whole bunch of his fellow Green Lanterns, goes to the dark side, basically, turns into a supervillain. Like, it's a whole thing. Eventually, people have to stop him from, like, rewriting reality. And he eventually sacrifices himself in the last moment of like, oh, I've made a horrible mistake. I'm going to sacrifice myself to restart the sun. So he's gone. Hal's dead, vilified. Yeah. They do other stuff I'm not going to get into. But they manage, a writer comes and says, I'm going to bring back Hal Jordan. I'm going to say that he did all that stuff because there was this always existing evil entity called Parallax, which is what Hal called himself after he went evil, that actually infected him, made him do all this stuff. And it just like took everything about the mythos, sort of codified it, said, yes, this, yes, that, yes, and this, yes, but that, yes, this, yes, that. And just like, it was amazing. Like that run was so great because it did things. A lot of people look at Green Lantern like, oh, he's got a magic ring that, like, yeah, he uses willpower and he can do whatever he wants. Right. And so what they did is in one segment, they had his buddy Green Arrow. He had Hal's ring, and bad guy Sinestro was about to kill off another Green Lantern, and he had the upper hand. And Green Arrow Ollie is trying to use Hal's ring, and he's like, argh! And Sinestro's like, bitch, you don't know how hard that is. You can't fucking man up and do it. Right. Like, you betrayed Hal and like got him killed. You're not gonna be able to use his fucking ring. You're a bitch. And turns his back on him and always like, motherfucker, and manifests a green arrow and shoots it into the back of Sinestro. And immediately he's like, oh, I'm exhausted. And the other Green Lantern grabs Ollie and drags him out of there before Sinestro blows the place up. And Ollie's like, oh my God, I feel like I just ran like a fucking marathon. He's like, is it like that every time? And Kyle's like, yeah, it's like that every time you use the ring. And he's just like, damn. And so that scene, which has, emotional weight to it and everything else like that. Right. But it's also like, oh shit. Every time one of the Green Lanterns do this thing that requires willpower, it's not a little bit of willpower. Right. It's a truckload of willpower. And it automatically makes every single Green Lantern that much more badass. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Yeah. And that's a retcon. That's a total change that was never established before, but it added to it. Right. Made this other thing.
It was witty and it was creative within the parameters of the spacing.
Right.
Which was brilliant. But that's almost kind of like that whole thing about Superman talking about like almost like the world is like paper and he always got to be very careful so he can't hurt anything. Like everything.
Cardboard world speech.
Yeah, exactly. He got to be so careful with everything he does because he could potentially just destroy everything.
Right. And that's when it's like, oh yeah, Superman's strong. It's like, no. Superman's been holding back the whole time. And it's like, you buddy, you can take it. Here we go. Bam, bam, bam.
Oh no, you could take it. Oh man, that was so powerful. Justice League Unlimited, oh man. You talk, man. I still revisit that show. Yeah, but that it just had so many moments. Like it don't make no sense why those DC movies are where they at now. When you had that was a cartoon. That was oh boy. It didn't make no sense.
Well, that's a perfect case of Zack Snyder going way outside those boundaries of like, I've got 20, 30, maybe 50, 60% of what this character is, and then really going somewhere else with the other 30%.
Yeah. I think he's messing with fundamentals, and that's what threw me off with him and his Superman. Now, was it a good movie? It was fine, but to me, it wasn't a Superman movie. Not to me. Now, if it was any other character, I'd be fine with it. But it was hitting too many things that I needed to be there. Like, it just wasn't enough stuff lining up. So it was a good bad movie.
And it's a similar thing with The Last Jedi. There's parts of it, things that he's doing with the characters, things that he's doing with sort of expectations of being a Jedi, a hero, whatever. There's themes that he's talking about that in a different movie.
Yeah.
Fuck yes.
Yeah.
Like, I get that. And he's obviously a very good director and a very good writer. Fucking Knives Out is goddamn amazing, but it didn't work in that. And that's ignoring all the other sort of structural dumb shit that went on in that movie. Yeah. We're out of gas. Oh no.
Hey, I would always think twice about what direction I was going when the main person in the movie, where you got Mark Hamill saying, hey, I don't
this
think
is not my character.
This is not my character, and I don't think the fans are gonna like this. Now, if he's saying that, and he's been with that character forever, you know, trust that he has a little insight. If the canary is dying in the coal mine, you need to listen.
Right. And on that, speaking of Mandalorian again.
Yeah.
End of season 2. Spoilers. Close earmuffs. Like, Luke Skywalker shows up, right? Yeah. Saves the day. And it doesn't undermine anything else the other characters do, but it was really interesting watching all of the reaction videos. Because admittedly, when I watched it, I was like, is that Luke? Is it? I'm like, is it? I'm like, oh, it's Luke. Okay, cool. And sadly, that was like it. I was like, oh, it's Luke. Okay, cool.
Right.
But I watched some of those reaction videos, and people are losing their shit. And people are crying. People are crying. Because, like, with some of these characters, like, I mean, we have basically, so there's parasocial relationships, right? Where this happens a lot with YouTubers and influencers, but it also happens with fictional characters, right? We engage with them as if they're a person we know, because we get to see all their internal thoughts a lot of times. We get to see all their we connect with them like they're our best friends.
Right.
And for a lot of us, we've known them since we were a kid. And like, Superman's a hero, Spider-Man's a hero, So these moments where they show up out of the fucking blue and they're the cavalry and they save the day.
Right.
Like, that's I would think that would be up there with, like, you're in a rough situation in real life. And one of your mentors shows up, like, or, assuming you have a good relationship with your dad or your mom, one of your parents just, like, shows up out of the blue and saves the fucking day. Yeah. Like, it's that. So I get why some people are upset when they get the characterization of Luke Skywalker a little off, because it's really upsetting. You're changing this person. I know. It's psychologically, it's on that level. It's not, oh, you've messed up this fictional character's interpretation. It's like, no, you're changing my friend, my hero, my role model.
Right.
So the upsetness over that, oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. The trying to get people fired or chased off of Twitter.
Realizing it was Luke that was coming to save Grogu. Why do you feel that you were kind of like, about it? Like, it was cool, but you wasn't like I said, the reaction videos of the crying and people
trying to figure that out for a while. I was like, okay, well, it's that looks like is it green lightsaber? No, yeah. Okay, it's green lightsaber. Is that his belt? It was just like, are they like? I almost didn't believe that they were gonna do it. Yeah, that really what it came down to. I was like, are they? Oh, they're fucking doing it, which I think just took me out of it too much. I was playing the what's going to happen plot wise, what are the creators doing, not
you think it's so much you're not in the moment, right? You're too busy trying to calculate and trying to figure out.
Right, because like even when the X-Wing showed up, I was like, is it one of the pilots? Weird, but the music's playing, like, and I was like, oh, okay, we got, but is it a bad guy? I'm like, no, what? And part of it was like, why is he still wearing all black? Because
Yeah.
like this is supposed to be a little bit after Return of the Jedi. I would figure he'd be like, I'm wearing all this black because I was slipping towards becoming my father. I mean, that thematically is why he was wearing
Yeah.
black.
Mm-hmm.
Like literally
Yeah.
to the point where when his jacket flap comes open,
Yeah.
and it's white on the inside because that's him getting to the point of like, oh, I've made a horrible mistake. I'm going to back away from the dark side. It's literally down to the costuming. So anyway, when he shows up and he's still all in black, I was like, oh, why is Luke still wearing black? And it just took me out of it too much. And I did that to myself.
No. And I kind of had a similar kind of feeling about the whole thing. Kind of remind me of what people would call like stunt casting in a way. It's almost kind of like that show went so far on its own. Where I was kind of done with the movies in a way, or just kind of like feeling, a ways about the movies. And this thing came out of nowhere, and it was just it was encapsulated. It was his own little world. And so you would think that it would have needed all this stuff to kind of connect it, to make you feel like, hey man, you need this special person or from this movie or this person to show up to make you like the show. That show earned its own place.
Exactly.
So for it to pull that when it didn't really need it, when it's done so great on its own, it's almost kind of like, why are you pulling that mess into here for? It's kind of like it didn't really need it. And if you're going to do it in a different way where it didn't feel like, because like I said, that show survived that long without it. And the people that need to kind of get folded in, I felt that it was his own world, and it could have did what it was cool that he was there, but I think it could have did without Luke being there.
It was his own world to an extent because you got Dave. I'm gonna. Oh God, I'll make his name right. Dave Filoni. Right? Did Clone Wars. Did Rebels. Right? Basically, George Lucas's anointed carrier of the lore.
Right.
He was just dropping little things in season 1 that ties it into the rest of the lore. And season 2, they went heavy. Right? Because you got Boba Fett, Ahsoka, right? All the rest of it. So they were tying it more into the wider universe. But I kind of just thought of it as like, that's a nice cherry on top, because Luke fits exactly what they needed, which granted, it wasn't accidental. Like they're setting up a Jedi needs to take care of Grogu.
Yeah.
Valid point.
Yeah.
Well, what Jedi are there? Well, there's Ahsoka, but she's not taking them because she's also not a Jedi.
Yeah.
She left the Jedi. So who's left? Because technically all the rest of them are supposed to be dead. So either we have to set up a totally unknown Jedi who has somehow survived, and then why did that happen? Continuity and blah blah blah. And it's like, well, we got Luke. We got Luke. Why don't we just use Luke, right? And not have to do all this other explaining of who this new person is, right? So I wasn't like, oh, how dare they? I was like, yeah, that works, because Luke's gonna go off and do whatever.
Okay.
And hopefully Grogu leaves his academy before Ben Solo murders everyone.
Okay.
That's the fun thing when you're like, oh, wait a minute. All of Luke's students died.
Yeah. I was kind of thinking of it almost how, like, maybe a better example would be like Teen Titans is fine. You kind of like all the characters. You like Robin on his own with Starfire and everybody. And then Batman just kind of keeps showing up, or he shows up. It's like, well, I don't really need Batman here. Right. Like they're strong on their own. And I know he's connected to Batman and stuff, but do you really need Batman to come in and help save the situation when they kind of got their own thing? But the way you said it with Luke, then that makes sense. Especially, I forgot about the whole thing about all the Jedi being taken out and stuff. So, So you logically made it make sense. So that I respect that. But like I said, but when I seen him there, as cool as it was, I thought I would have felt more for it, considering what that was.
Right.
But
Yeah, and you were talking earlier about like being satisfied with the things that they pulled in. Right, from the old continuity. So like Admiral, I'm gonna try and pronounce it right, Thrawn, right, which got included in Rebels, and Ahsoka is clearly looking for Thrawn. He's from the books. He's from the books. That's where he originated. I think he had like two trilogies where he's like one of the antagonists.
Oh, wow.
Right, and that's like, oh, cool. They're cherry picking nice things, and there's tons of stuff that I'm totally satisfied with them leaving on the drawing board or the drawing table.
Mhm.
But there's other weird things in there that are also like weird Force sort of rule breaking things. So like they had this whole thing. Oh, there's one of the Thrawn trilogies. They find some planet where there's some little weird little creature, a little cat-sized creature, and it just pushes the Force away from it. So there's these weird little bubbles where the Force can't sense or do anything.
Huh.
Right? Which is like, okay. And basically, I'm sure what it is this is essentially a kryptonite, right? Superman needs to be made weak. We come up with kryptonite. Boom, he's got a weakness.
Right.
So the writers is like, damn, we've spent like 10 years like writing up how badass Force users are like Luke. We need to throw a curveball. Let's come up with this rare creature so the bad guys can discover it.
Mhm.
And it'll make it so that Luke can't sense or do anything inside those little anti-Force bubbles.
That's terrible.
Ah, cool, right? So it's clearly limited because it's tied to a creature, right? Move the creature around. Who has the creature? Who knows where to get the creature? All this sort of stuff, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And the funny thing is, Admiral Thrawn wasn't using it specifically to thwart Luke Skywalker. He had an insane Jedi clone who he was working with and was like, I'm going to become the new emperor. And he's like, I'm going to keep my little fluffy pet right next to me at all times so you can't fucking force choke me. Thank you very much. Please get back to work.
That's dope.
Right? Like it became a mechanic. It's like sort of my point earlier about like, you know, the technology works in a certain way and the magic, whatever it is, works in a certain way, is sometimes those are shortcuts to get a story beat. But sometimes those are specific limits to create tension, right? To create a problem, to create a hurdle, right? Kryptonite is maybe not a great example of that because it's just too overblown, right?
Yeah.
But this limited creature with its tiny little force bubble, maybe just a couple feet across, I'm like, oh, okay, that creates an interesting situation where someone's regular ability no work no more. Yeah. So now I got to do this other thing. Which brings us to the Yukyong Vong. I'm going to try and pronounce that right. I looked it up on the back of one of the covers of the books.
Okay.
So I don't know when they did this, but it was kind of late in sort of the book runs. I think this was like the New Jedi Order series. So you know how in comics you have those big events? Krull, King of Darkness, and the symbiote spawns is going to take over the universe, well, right? Those big continuity things, right? Where a thing's going to affect everyone and everything. So I think
like Beyonder and the Secret Wars and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So I think one or a bunch of the creatives that were responsible for the Star Wars books, which I think was under Lucasfilm, was like, we need to do that. We need to upset the order because we're just doing a whole bunch of here's the new bad guy of the week, which is maybe a book or 2 or 3 books, and then they're done, and then and it's like we got to really upset the status quo because at that point in the books, like the New Republic was stable, they were the power in the galaxy again, right? They're dealing with like an Imperial remnant, blah blah blah. So someone's like, all right, let's come up with a bad guy that can take on the Republic and fuck over Jedi. So they came up with the Yukushvong. I'm sure it's a mispronunciation. I don't care. Yukushvong, it's what I always call them. And basically, these guys come from literally outside the galaxy. They came from another galaxy. They flew all the way here in their little bio ships because all their technology is biological. And there's just tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of them, like a whole invading army. They're going to invade the galaxy. And they're, you know, biochemists, so they can send a little spore down to a planet and just like rewrite its entire ecology. Oh, wow. Just like turn it all to biological goo that they can use to like make their new ships and all. It's like, holy fuck, that's crazy. But they're basically, you've seen Hellraiser, they're the Cenobites, Pinhead. They're like, pain is existence, pain is everything. I will mutilate for further pain. And apparently they're so far down the rabbit hole in that the Force wants nothing to do with them.
Wow.
So an entire species culture is invisible to the Force. So that means all the Force users not only are like, oh, I can't sense their presence, their Jedi reflexes don't work because they don't know what they're gonna do.
Wow.
Right? Which is like, I go back and forth of like, that is fucking bonkers, like too much. But like, it works because now you've got a whole bunch of Jedi, and some of them are really good fighting with lightsabers, even without their abilities. And some of them rely a lot on their reflexes. So you see a lot of Jedi freaking go down. Because at this point, you know, Luke's built up his academy and the Jedi are back. And like, it's a whole bunch of like, I think like late 90s kind of extreme. Because they kill off Chewbacca. They legit kill out. Yeah. And here's the thing. A lot of times, character deaths, this one was left field. Like, I had no clue going into this book it was going to happen, but they were upsetting the status quo for the galaxy. They're trying to upset the status quo for the characters. So Han, Chewie, and Han's 3 kids. So him and Leia had twins. Yeah, Jason and Jasiah, and they're like teenagers. They're basically Jedi. They've gone through Luke's academy. They had a whole like Young Jedi Academy series. Read the shit out of that. Yeah. Chewie's nephew, the worst uncreative name ever of Lobaka, was one of their friends. They're like, let's come up with another name. Chewie, Lobaka, cool. So anyway, Han's there, Chewie, his 2 twin kids, and their youngest kid, Anakin. So they're on this planet, and they're basically there trying to like people are just becoming aware of this threat, the Okashvong, and they're trying to like track down what's happening. They think something came here to this particular planet, and they're trying to track it down. And the short version, what happens is they start to track sort of like they're looking for orbital things that might have flown in. And one of the things they realize is like, hey, wait a minute, the moon's trajectory has been changing. Like, it's getting closer to the planet. And every time it passes over this one spot over a specific continent, it gets a little bit closer. It gets pulled towards the planet. Whoa. Because the Okashvong, they're coral ships that move through space. They don't use hyperspace. They have gravity generators. So they're actually like warping space-time to move through space. Right?
That's right.
They're basically pulling themselves through space. So they sent basically a seedling of one of these things down to the planet, and it's been growing in this desolate area, and it got grown enough where it could start using its gravity generator, and it's been pulling the moon down to the planet because they don't want to take over the planet. It's too strategic to the Republic. They're just going to destroy it. And by the time Han, Chewie, the rest of them figure this out, they're like, oh fuck, it's too late. The moon is destabilized. It's falling down to the planet. Like, we've got a couple days before the whole like tectonic plates are just going to rupture from the gravity distortions.
Wow.
So they're like, oh fuck, like let the government know, like get ships here immediately. And so they're like, we got the Millennium Falcon. We're going to just start ferrying people up to the stable space station. So they're going back and forth, picking people up. And of course, it's the last run. And they go down. And at this point, like, there's massive earthquakes. There's volcanic eruptions here, there, everywhere. And it's Han and Chewie basically down at the end of the ramp. And they're just like pulling people into the ship, right? Anakin, the youngest who could fly, is, at the controls. And what happens is one of the tectonic plates shifts. And like the whole ship gets thrown up, and Chewie gets knocked away, and Anakin gets the ship into a hover, and Han's like hanging on to the end of the ramp, pulls himself in. His 2 kids are like, Dad, like, he's like, get Chewie. We got to go back for Chewie. There's hurricanes because the whole planet's falling apart. Anakin flies in. I'm maybe not getting this totally accurate because I seem to recall Chewie, when they come in close, Chewie throws someone onto the ramp.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know if that was Han or one of the other kids, but Chewie basically chucks one of the kids onto the ship. And then another big gust of wind comes, and Anakin like can't hold the ship nearby, and more volcanic eruptions. And so Han's kid is like, fuck, I have to fly us away, because either we go and get Chewie and we all die,
Yeah.
or we get the ship to safety.
Wow.
And so he flies away. And basically the last shot, this is of course in a book, you get is like the smoke clears or something, and Chewie's basically up on a precipice, and he just gives out a big battle yell, and then a volcanic eruption takes him.
Oh wow.
Right? And it's like, holy crap, it was gutting. It was gutting,
crazy.
But it was epic. Right? And then like that changes the status quo for Han. Like he's married to Leia, but like his best friend just fucking died, and his kid's responsible, kinda, but that's not fair. And so like Han just like kind of goes on a bender and like so doesn't quite like leave, but he has to sort of find himself a new alien companion is really what it comes down to. He runs into this other guy who's like part of this weird other species, and like da 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 da. But
that's crazy. I have a question. So why the hell we sat through J.J. Abrams' 3 bad movies?
Oh fuck! I hated that.
When we could have had that. That don't make any sense. How are they scratching for stories and stuff and making up stuff?
Because there's too much.
Or starting a movie off, doing the first one, but then leaving no instruction manual, no nothing, and then another person comes in, Rian Johnson, he makes it what he wants to do. People have a backlash about it, and then JJ come back and make up a finish for it. It's like, what you told me, that should have been it. I don't understand.
But there's too much. There's too much. Because literally, so just like when you have the annual comic event, it's not like 1 or 2 comics. It's like 20, 30 comics. And there was probably that many, if not more, books for the entire Yokeshvong whole thing.
That's fine. But even what you just told me, and I don't know those, that was a story to me. That was complete enough. And anything that was a loose string that would unravel the whole thing, you just kind of omit it, or you use a person that's already that we know to cover that spot. That's the thing what he did, like, Civil War. That's not like the Civil War in the comic.
Into the Spider-Verse was also an interpretation of Miles Morales.
Exactly.
Right?
So
that was out of the Ultimates run. You don't have to do the whole Ultimates. Yeah, there's tons of content that you could pick from.
Right.
But
so, wow, boy. That's crazy.
But it's I get why they didn't want to do that. Let's say you're cherry picking. You've also got the original cast who are fucking old. Love them to death. We should be lucky we got what we got of Princess Leia before Carrie Fisher died.
They should have did more of that character anywhere. I think that
I agree.
They should at least have all 3 of them together before. That didn't make any sense. So
right, and that's why like.
That's a shame.
My ridiculous fan film. I put it 100 years later because I didn't feel like I could do anything with those characters. I didn't have the ability to get like even lookalikes or anything else like that, and I wanted to tell a different story. So I just moved it way past that, and that also alleviates the problem of they had their happy ending, and then Force Awakens has to fuck it up, right? If you're going to include them emotionally, you have to fuck up their happy ending. It's the same thing with like TV shows, and like everything ends awesome at the end of season 1, and it's like, or maybe at the end of season 5, which was the original expected run, and they're like, please make us 2 more seasons. And I was like, here's the new status quo. It's not great. Right. So there's interesting things in there that they could do. Like, I'm sure one of the things that people were disappointed out was Mara Jade, which was one of the characters from the Legacy canon, was Luke's wife.
Oh.
Yeah. So, I mean, talk about another fucking cool character. Her backstory is that Vader's the right hand of the Emperor, and she was the left hand of the Emperor. So basically, she was Vader's backup. So, the Emperor did this all the time. He trained multiple apprentices. You lose one, hey, you got a backup, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So he trained her as an assassin, knows how to do the lightsaber, all this stuff, and she would just go out and take care of problems for the Emperor. So supposedly she was even in Jabba's palace around the same time Luke was, and she gets basically, as the Emperor is dying, she gets a vision from the Emperor of just like, Vader and this kid have fucking betrayed me. go kill Luke Skywalker.
Oh.
And so that becomes sort of her directive. And what happens is it's like, you know, a decade later, she's sort of living a new life. And of course, plot, she comes across Luke Skywalker and she's like, fuck that guy. I hate him because he killed her mentor. He may not have been a nice mentor, but it was her mentor.
Yeah.
And she's just like fucking hating on Luke the whole time, and basically has a couple opportunities where it's like she's being a total dick, and Luke's just like, no, I get it. And opportunities where like he saves her, he could have killed her, he could have left her for dead, and it's just one of those things where like her version of Luke versus the version that he's being does not compute, and she's like, maybe the Emperor wasn't straight with me.
Yeah.
And that's how they get introduced. And eventually, it's like, oh, you're actually kind of cool. And they eventually get married, which, yeah, I guess Jedi can do that before the prequels. And their kid is named Ben.
That sounds a lot better than drinking blue milk straight from the tit and throwing a lightsaber, chucking it off the side of the mountain. I could go with that story you just said. I think that would be a good substitute for the crap we got. That's crazy.
It's like, honestly, at this point, Force Awakens, it's fine. It's fine. Like, it's okay. Let's be honest. I've watched all the other movies too. If you take the nostalgia filter off, it's like, it works. It's like, yes, it's repetitive. It's New Hope all over again. But compared to The Last Jedi and all its problems and the fucking clusterfuck that is The Rise of Skywalker, I just pretend they don't exist. All right? I just remove the source of disappointment.
Yeah.
And I keep seeing these headlines occasionally of like, fans want, or you know, the people at Lucasfilm, they're gonna retcon those out of existence or some shit. And it's like, fucking harsh. But I get how they could do it if they wanted to. Like, Dave Filoni opened the door for time travel, so
yeah. Well, I hope somebody come across this episode and hear you talking and hire your butt so you could try to, you know, right the ship, because you need more people like yourselves that, you know, are open to change but fair, and you consider everything, which makes for good ideas. Because like I said, it just seemed like it's so all over the place, but it makes such a big difference when you see when it's in the hands of somebody who really loves it and wants to add to it. Because even with the people who do that makes changes that came out of nowhere, at least you know where it's coming from, and it feels different than just like, you know, this, I have an agenda this time, or I want to make sure that, you know, somebody's represented in there or whatever, without the, you know, because you could do those things naturally without it being an issue. It wasn't like, you know, it's just like I said, handling certain things in different hands make a big difference. And it's just shocking that, like I said, that show Mandalorian had more heart and felt more like, you know, the Star Wars I know than the actual Star Wars movies. And they had big budgets and they had big actors, and they even had the original cast, a lot of them coming back and stuff. And it was just in the wrong hands, you know, and you could like something but not be the right thing for it. And I think that's what that was, down from the producers, from Kathleen Kennedy to JJ, you know, with his sleight of hand of giving you the same thing but different but the same thing trick, which is fine, but you're not going any further. You're not, you know.
Well, and the other thing too, I mean, people have already been critical of JJ and his magic mystery box.
Yeah.
That's not Star Wars. Like, Star Wars has the greatest reveal in cinema of, no, I am your father, right? People lost their goddamn minds, but that wasn't, we are gonna tease your parentage is not what you think it is. It was just like, yeah, your dad was this, he's not an important character, he died, and then they decided later it's actually gonna be Vader, right? And you can even plan ahead of time, like, I'm gonna plan a twist, and I'm gonna show some restraint and just not allude to it later, so that when it happens, it fits, but it's not like, oh yeah, who are your parents? You're desperate and waiting for your parents. Oh, I wonder who they are. You have visions. Oh, it's so fucking heavy-handed.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that JJ.
But
well intended, I'm sure, but
even before the reveal of Darth Vader being Luke's father, the twist of Leia's Luke's sister. Leia's Luke's sister.
right?
Awkward.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. There was a whole thing like I think yeah, like there was considerations of doing that, but once they were like, oh wait, that means nope.
They fixed that. They fixed that right on up, because before it was almost like a love interest, and they was like, oh nope,
right,
that's his sister. But
they did, at least in what was it, Empire Strikes Back, they knew that they were going to do that, because when Luke leaves to go to Cloud City, right, Yoda and Obi-Wan are like, don't fucking go, dude, this is a bad idea, we're full of bad ideas, we know, don't do this, don't go. Of course he leaves, and then they're like, damn it, he was our last hope. And then Yoda's like, there is another, which technically fucking Obi-Wan should fucking know, because according to the prequels he was there when the twins were born anyway. So I was like, yeah,
that's true.
There's Leia, like they would
Here's
both
a
know.
picture, stay away from her.
Right.
With your vast knowledge, I'm going to ask you this real quick. And I was kind of curious your thoughts on it. So when George Lucas revealed that, the Force was actually like a parasite.
Oh, the midichlorians.
What was your feelings about that whole thing?
So this is hilarious, because we've been talking about like plot convenient and narrative convenient things, and that's exactly what it was. It was, I need a way for it to be clear and easy for Qui-Gon Jinn to realize, holy shit, this kid's got potential, like maybe the one of the prophecy potential, even though he can't do any Force stuff yet. Right? And so he's like, oh, well, okay, we'll just make it so the midichlorian counts, and yeah, that's how we can tell who has connections through the Force.
That's the reason for that?
Well, if I was writing it and trying to figure out a shortcut for how it can work, how I can tell directly, Qui-Gon can just take a test and be like, holy crap, this kid's got crazy potential.
Oh.
I mean, they could have theoretically done a thing where Qui-Gon just senses how connected the kid is to the Force. But usually it seems in the past it was like, oh, you've had some training, you've got potential, right?
Yeah.
Now, I don't know, maybe that's just me talking out of my butt, but it might have been Lucas was like, no. I want to do that. I want it to be tied to midichlorian count for whatever reason. I mean, that might also be why it's tied to bloodlines. Right?
Okay.
But then also fucking Anakin being a virgin birth, right? The midichlorians gave birth to him. I mean, he's got a whole thing where it's like the Force is sentient, and there's literally two sides to it. There is a light side and there's a dark side, and it's basically meddling to maintain the balance. And so it had to create Anakin.
That's interesting, because I always kind of figured, I was kind of wondering if it was just because they're trying to tone down like the religious kind of thing to it to make it more, I guess, almost more science instead of religious in a way. It's because the Force before, it would seem like it was more like a religious thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is
religious, but
Eastern philosophy.
Yeah,
giant. Like, I mean that.
It seemed like more of a spiritual thing than it did like science. But when you said, it's a parasite basically, then it's like, okay, then that kind of takes it puts rules and parameters on it.
Right. And they already kind of was like, it seems to run through bloodlines because you were strong, just like your father before you, blah, blah, blah. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But and that is also the same movie where they're like they drop the Eastern philosophy. That's where they put it in. Like, it wasn't there in A New Hope. It wasn't there in the first movie.
Right.
And that probably wasn't super Lucas either. I'm sure he was like, oh yeah, do that. It was the writer, which wasn't Lucas. He put that stuff in there. And
okay.
I mean, I was thinking about this the other day, but like going back to all the fan films, that became like a recurring discussion within those fan films, because basically you've got this hodgepodge Eastern philosophy, which I take as, Hinduism and Taoism and Buddhism and Zen, and just sort of puts it all into sort of a generic pot. But central to a lot of those is like, yeah, you and this is Yoda is like, made of this crude stuff we are not. Luminous beings we are. It's like, yeah, you are misidentifying with your body and your ego. That is not the true self. Basically, in the Star Wars interpretation, it's like true self is the Force.
Right.
Which is an underpinning, in my interpretation, of a lot of those Eastern philosophies. Like, if you take out the religion from those, because there's the Hindu religion, but there's the Hindu philosophy underneath it of what it's trying to talk about, right? And that was the same thing probably with early Judaism and early Christianity and Islam. There's probably a bunch of mystics doing meditation and other stuff, and they're trying to find ways of talking about it. And people turn that into a goddamn religion instead of like, you're missing the point.
Yeah.
But for Hindu, Buddhism, Taoism, it's like, you are not the true thing. You are misidentifying with your ego, with your body, and all the rest of that stuff. Like, you are the foundations of the river, but you're actually the water of the river. And the water of the river goes from the Amazon and goes to the Mississippi and goes to the Himalayas and rains down. And we are all that, but we're misidentifying with the particular geography that we're at, right? So if you're, not identifying with yourself and your ego, right? The light side is you're detaching from things, right? That's why Yoda's like, Anakin, don't, you gotta let go of things, because your attachment to them is what's causing you pain, right? If you love something and care about it, you want to protect it, and you will do things, be motivated by that, right? Totally valid. That's a whole bunch of Eastern philosophy right there. But then you got a bunch of fucking Jedi running around like fucking cowboys, getting involved in everything.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Like that version, that cowboy version, doesn't track with the actual philosophy. So there's lots of these fan films trying to talk about that, and they usually put it in the context of Jedis and Sith sort of arguing and calling each other out, or discussing it between Jedi. There's some of them that weren't explicitly combat heavy, right? They're like, what you're doing is bullshit, right? It's not valid, because you're protecting that city, but because you care about that city, you're attached to that city, right? And if you take it in those very black or white distinctions of caring or not caring, it doesn't make sense. But if it's like, I could care about 1,000 things, and I'm going to rein that back so that I don't have those heavy reactions to them. And maybe I care about one thing, and I can get out of whack about that one thing. And maybe I can get to a point where I can appreciate these things, but not lose my shit over them when they're destroyed, right? Or when someone retcons them, right? Right. It's so many of those Eastern philosophies, they're not talking about all these metaphysics. They're talking about you in your mind.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. They're using all this metaphysics to just talk about how to exist within yourself, right? And that correlates to the universe and all the rest of the stuff. But there's ample sort of discussion there for people that are actually interested in the depth of what is the philosophy behind the Force and the Jedi and the rest of it, and how it actually works. Because they've had characters, they did a great thing. So One of my favorite series is the X-Wing Rogue Squadron books. There's like 9 of them.
Mhm.
2 authors, they went back and forth. And they introduce a new character, Corn Horn, hotshot pilot, and they're going to form Rogue Squadron, right? Wedge Antilles, Luke's buddy, ace pilot. He wants a crew that can do, they can go and do fighter pilot missions, but they also got a weird skill set, so they can like go to the ground and like infiltrate, blow stuff up, and blah 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 blah. Right? Special forces with jets. So Cornhorn's the focus protagonist, right? It's through his sort of viewpoint and sometimes through Wedge. And you get like 4 books through, and he's got his tragic backstory and all this sort of stuff, and like he used to work security in a different system, and like his dad was like a cop basically, and like the only thing he has left from his dad who was murdered is like this token, and it's like a Jedi token, because his grandfather is best friends with a Jedi, and it's like, finds out, no buddy, your grandfather was a fucking Jedi, your dad was a Padawan, and they escaped Order 66 before Order 66 was an official thing. They escaped the Purge, and by the way, you got Force potential. It's like, so he becomes a Jedi. Like out of those books, he becomes a reoccurring character that shows up in all these other books.
Oh, wow.
And like has this whole thing where he like finds this smuggler lady who was like the daughter of his dad's nemesis and all this sort of stuff. Of course, they end up, starting a family, blah, 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 blah. And then they just have one book where someone kidnaps his wife. And he goes fucking Batman. It's been a while since I read it, but that's the short version. He's like, I'm a Jedi. I've got a code. But I'm going to go get my goddamn wife. Like, I mean, that's the same thing for Anakin, except Anakin was worried about the visions of what was going to happen to his wife.
Right.
Something is happening to my wife. I got to do this and hold myself in check, or else I'm going to the dark side, lickety split.
Yeah. Wow.
So there's obviously great stories there in those books. There's some duds, but I totally also get why they were like, yeah, there's too much. We'll cherry pick a few things and we'll just let the rest of it go. And they could still go back and do those stories. They could still go back and be like, yeah, so Corn Horn either was in Rogue Squadron or something else, but like that structure of a Jedi who has a wife, abides by the code, has cleaned himself up, is a better fucking person. Oh shit, the mob has my wife. I can go full John Wick, but I will never stop being John Wick.
Right.
Okay, I gotta be Batman and be upset and go terrorize these fuckers, but also not lose my gourd. Right. Like, I can't go overboard. So like, yeah, and that doesn't even have to be in the timeline that like 20 years after whatever. Like, you can tell that story wherever.
Exactly.
Which is why also in the books, the new run, they're like 10,000 years ago in the High Republic, right? And they can tell whatever goddamn stories they want with, it's like the Jedi at their prime.
Yeah, that's what I don't understand why they're so hard up for stories. Like I said, just the ones you told me about. Just like it has a beginning and end. It has a through line. It has a purpose and stuff like that. And it's so many movies and shows that we watch every time with new characters that we don't know all the stuff, but we kind of learn along the way. But we know the main thing. Like, I don't remember John Wick's wife's name, but I know he done tore up a whole city and across the world because of her. I know that.
Right.
I know his purpose. So you gonna be a showrunner before this is all over. Somebody gonna scoop,
ain't got time.
Somebody gonna scoop you up, and that's gonna be, Lucas, he's not far from here, he's probably 40-minute drive. So,
well, I still got my shirt from Skywalker Ranch. When I was there as a PA for a week.
Oh, wow. Yeah, man. Like I said, you should use your powers for good and save this franchise.
Well, I think if they get Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, let's give him huge credit, because he's the executive showrunner. Like,
yeah.
If they can be the Kevin Feige's for, the new Star Wars live action content, which I'm pretty much sure they are, I think we're in good hands. So
yeah, I'm hoping so.
And I can't say I'd be even a tenth as good as them. So I will humbly pass. I will stick to running Star Wars campaigns with with my gamer friends.
Dude, don't sell yourself short. And the fact that you're humble about it is the reason why you probably be ideal for the situation. I'm like, don't be afraid to step up to a situation. You never know. Life has done stranger things. So
I mean, that'd be pretty fucking cool. But
it sure would. It sure would. And you definitely have enough ideas to have a good you would have job security, that's for sure. Because it seems like there's a lot of people in different places, just like I said, they just in the wrong spots. And so they get people that really, like I said, one is knowledgeable and then also very creative in their own way, and then also sees both sides of it. That's very important. But if you have consideration for the thing that you love, that's the most important part. And then you'll figure out a way to get to where you're trying to get, versus being driven by money or agenda that you want to put out there or whatever. So you need people those kind of personalities and knowledge and stuff to be in the right places to make these things for us fans. Because like we could tell, like I said, it don't have to be big budget, it don't have to be characters we've seen before, it don't have to be, or characters we love. It's so special when you have something that you know so well and somebody squeezes something else out of there.
Right.
You know how hard that is for something to be around for 50 years, 40 years, 30 years and still make you choke up when it's done right. That goes to show you, that shouldn't be rare. But when it does happen, it's just a beautiful sight to see. So like I said, put it out there, man. Put it out there for sure.
If I had my magical druthers, I would give both Rey and Finn the full character arcs they fucking deserved.
Oh yeah.
Oh, especially Finn. Jesus Christ. Like his fucking origin story. The kidnapped, brainwashed child stormtrooper who basically turns away from the Nazis.
Wow.
And yeah, at first just like he's just running. He's just running to get away. And then he tags up with the resistance. Like, that's a fucking story you can do shit with.
That's the story I thought we were gonna get.
Right?
That's it. From the trailer when he just kind of pops up and he got the stormtrooper outfit and he's just like trying to get away. That's what I thought that we were gonna get, and with force potential, I thought. But you just didn't know. But it's, like I said, but
yeah. And, let me say nice things of Rian Johnson's choices, things that I liked.
Go for it.
The fact that in The Last Jedi, he kind of just threw JJ's "who's your parents" thing out the fucking window.
Yes.
And made it like, doesn't matter. Like, your parents weren't nobodies in the sense of like low social status, but it's just like, it doesn't matter who your parents are. You get to determine who you are. You don't have to come from the royal line of Force users to be a Jedi, to be important, to do anything else, which he wasn't just doing with Rey. So you remember when that horrible thing where they go to the fucking casino and that whole fucking side quest.
Yeah.
But they run into the kids who are clearly slaves working in the stalls, right? And they intentionally, unintentionally, I forget, inspire them a little bit because they're part of the resistance. They give them the little ring, right? Mm. They go back to one of those kids at the end of the fucking movie, and he opens the ring and it's got the secret rebel resistance sign in it, right? Mm-hmm. And he's looking up in the stars and like, I can make a difference too. And then he reaches out and force pulls the broom to him.
Right.
And it's like, that right there is every kid that has ever grown up watching fucking Star Wars. And the fact that Rey nor that kid has to be descended from the Skywalker line or later on from fucking Palpatine, but that anyone can go out and make a difference. Oh my God, the gut punch from that. Like, right at the end of the movie to hit that fucking note on the head. Oh, it got dusty in the theater.
I thought that scene was very powerful, but then I didn't understand because I thought you had to be in a bloodline to have force. So I didn't understand, like, so when did that change?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. It's like, if you go back just to the prequels, where yes, they established the midichlorian thing, it's like, well, where did any of the Jedi come from?
Yeah.
Like, there's tons of people that, like, everyone has midichlorians. Some have a little bit more and some have a little bit less, but it, like, are literally all the Jedi celibate, which means anytime the midichlorian count goes up, and they're clearly testing.
Yeah.
They're clearly testing people all over the place, and then they pull them into the Jedi Academy. Are they just like killing off that bloodline because they don't have a family?
Good point.
Like,
okay,
we shouldn't be too concerned with why isn't everyone as powerful as the Skywalkers? There's been tons of Jedis before. They show up wherever.
Yeah.
Now, whether that's, you know, the will of the Force, you know, saying your midichlorian count's going to be higher or your midichlorian count's going to be lower, or whether it's just bloodline, it doesn't matter, because it's the protagonist archetype. You can be the special person, right? You can make a difference. You can be the Jedi, right? And so that was one of his themes that I just ate the fuck up, right?
You know where I saw that first? A concept like that? Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Last episode of the last season. And they did a spell, and I can't remember if she died or sacrificed herself, but then she gave her, because when one vampire slayer died, another one takes her place. And so when she died, when they did a spell for, I think she died, and then it kind of gave her powers to like all these different girls. So it's just girls playing baseball, and you had this girl saving her father. So all these girls were just powerful, like it shared, you know, spread the wealth, and it was just so powerful seeing all these girls all over the world who just like, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. Usually everything is about taking from somebody, taking power from somebody, and this was just giving, sacrifice for the betterment of all. Let me give, let me lose, let me share, so others can also share with this and to pass on as well, to do good things in the world. It's just selfless, and it was just beautiful, man, beautiful. So I felt that same way when I saw that, and I was just like, I'm
a sucker for those, the sacrifice trope, like the cavalry showing up, like literally giving up your power at a critical moment so that other people can succeed. Like there's all sorts of stuff like that. Power of friendship. I know it's fucking corny, but Jesus Christ, like,
hey, it touches you for a reason. You know, they might call it corny, but it's a reason why it connects to us. It's a reason for that. And so you like that part, that scene, and what else did you like besides?
Oh geez. Okay, so I'm really gonna try and think hard because it's been a while since I watched it, because it's a fucking stinker.
You don't have to have anything else you like about it.
I think it was, and some of these got like deleted scenes, but it was Luke. You know, they're talking about the legacy of Luke Skywalker, and he's like actively trying to dismantle that and, you know, deconstruct it in a way of just like, the village is on fire, I'm not gonna go save him. And she's like running down the hill to save the little village on the island, and she like kicks open the gate to the village, and they're having a party and everything's fine. Right? And he has these little, just, I mean, it's Rian Johnson, let's be honest, putting this in Luke's mouth is like, you don't always know what's going on. Just putting the hero crown on your head doesn't mean you know what the fuck you're doing. Doesn't mean you're actually helping people. Like, just fucking check yourself. Right? Don't let it go to your head. I mean, it's just, I mean, if you look at Poe Dameron's arc and then it's like, have some fucking humility, buddy. Right? Which I think they could have done a better job on with his particular story. But
I think the story really did the characters a disjustice, considering all that stuff is new, of all the different characters with Poe and Rey and everybody and Finn and stuff. I thought that before we knew what was going on. We saw the trailers, even though it was shocking to quite a few people about, so these are the new folks and stuff like that. I think that people really were connecting to them and thought, okay. And so I thought it was just weird that the story kind of let that down. And Rian Johnson, what he did was a trip, but I think what made it really bite was the fact that it was contrasting what JJ started. So it was like a shifting gear in the middle of 60 miles per hour, and you just shift down to 20. If you would have started
reverse.
Right. So if you would have started with that, it'd be different. It'd be a journey, but have that in the middle and then to go back to 60 again for the last one, it was just kind of like, it would never feel right because it was just changing the directions in the middle of the journey. So it would never, it would always be crunchy.
Yeah. And that goes back to them not picking good showrunners, as it were. Right. Like having JJ, which we've already said wasn't probably the best choice, but then to have someone else come in and to have enough leeway to just nope, a whole bunch of that. Yeah. Like at least with the original trilogy and certainly with the prequels, George is in the background, yesing or knowing broad strokes, right? Yeah. Right. It's the first one, has a whole bunch of collaborators on that, but he's still the showrunner. Second one, new writer. Third one, new writer, new directors, right? Collaborators, but he's still the showrunner. So there's at least a coherent vision.
Right.
Even if they haven't figured out the next, Empire Strikes Back yet, or what the third one's going to be. Yeah. They didn't do that at fucking all, seemingly, with the sequel trilogy.
Yeah, because even with George Lucas with the first three, the first one was kind of like all his and you got what you got. And it's a classic just because it was new. So you couldn't even say it was bad or compared to anything because it was just so itself. If you saw when you had different writers, different directors and stuff, how the ideas were still there, but they knew what to pick and pull and how to edit it. They're saying like even his wife was involved to kind of, pull stuff together. So sometimes you have great ideas, but you need to have a person that's a great editor or somebody know how to rein it in or know what to take and what to leave out. Like it's a good idea, but it kind of takes away from this. So let's just move this out of the way. So, sometimes you need the artist to think big, but then you also need the other person to be, it's a mess, but then the gallery owner puts a frame on it and put the price tag and make it a product.
Exactly.
So first is your vision, then it's a product. So when it's a product, you sometimes, if you don't curate yourself or have a hard time doing that, sometimes you need others to make sure you don't, like the album is done. give me the damn
100%.
album.
It'd be very interesting to see the ahistorical version of the prequels where George did have other collaborators, just to see how that would change certain aspects of it and stuff. Because
then you could have style in there, but then it'd be style with the story and the overall vision, and then make it just kind of curated as they go. So what do you think about the whole thing where when we found out like a while later, the whole thing with Star Wars with Disney, that Lucas kind of had like blueprint for what
he had a blueprint. Well, this is one of those hindsight things. So maybe they should have listened, but that's only in hindsight. Like it might have been George's stuff. Could have also been his, his weird little.
That's true. Good point.
Right? We don't know. I haven't looked at that.
It could have been 3 more prequels, huh?
Well, I think he had plans for, proper sequel trilogy and stuff, but
no, I mean, I'm talking about like the tones and stories, because people were it was kind of rough for some people for, the stories and the, and all that kind of stuff. So it could have been some more of that, maybe. Well, not that exact story, but that sauce. That same
I certainly, I at least think I would have been humble enough to, even though there was a time where I was like, dude, Lucas didn't know what the fuck he was doing with the prequels, where I was like, no, Lucas actually did a pretty decent job. Yes, he has his weird things, but like, he's the guy that's been the showrunner the longest.
Yeah.
So if I was in, Kathleen Kennedy's or JJ's or Rian Johnson's shoes, I would have been like, can I call you every morning and just run shit past you?
Right.
Or maybe just once a week, but still, like, I'd be checking in because it's a tone setter. Right? And you never know. George might be like, all right, look, you're trying to get this narrative beat. Here's 2 other ideas. Who knows? Maybe you would have been like, nah, it's stupid. I don't know. I'm going to lunch. you know. But I've certainly softened on George Lucas from being like, man, prequels are like, because when I went through them, I was like, yay, the first one, I was like, oh yeah, there's some weird things. And then the second was like, okay, well, okay. Third one was like, huh, okay. And then, you know, Red Letter Media did their whole fucking breakdown. And then it was like, oh, those are all the problems that were like in the back of my mind. But then it's still like, it's taken longer to appreciate the story that Lucas was trying to tell. And yeah, he did it in his own weird way. And yeah, the acting is kind of wooden, you know, and there's all those shortcomings that he has when he doesn't have collaborators.
Yeah.
But even after, I was like, okay, yeah, Lucas is not so bad. Then the sequels came out, and I was like, okay, Lucas is pretty good.
Exactly. And that's the journey a lot of people had, how they kind of worked their way back around to being like, you know, it wasn't that bad. At least you could tell that it was cared for, and it was like, you know, you might not have liked the destination or the journey of it, but at least he knew where he was going. It was continuous.
And he had clear themes and things that he wanted to talk about. Yeah. Like Palpatine is supposed to be Nixon. The Emperor is supposed to be Nixon. And the war is supposed to be Vietnam, and like the whole Battle of Endor with the Ewoks is like, that's the fucking Viet Cong.
Wow.
And it was supposed to be the Wookiees, but instead of the Ewoks, but like those are the themes that he was working with very explicitly.
Wow.
Like, so there is depth there, and he is trying to say things. It's just, you know, the acting is a little wooden. The characterizations are a little, okay, maybe not as flavorful as the original, but far, far, far more forgiving.
Yeah.
By the way, the fucking Republic or the Resistance or whatever comes out of surviving the First Order needs to deal with slavery. Like, I'm sorry. Like, maybe it's a thing where it's just like, only on the backwater planets do we allow it because it's the South and we don't have any control there. But it's like, motherfuckers, you got sentient droids. Let's be clear. It's a sliding scale of sentience. Obviously, okay. But some of them, if you don't memory wipe them, turn into sentient people. They're just droids, but they're your slaves, and you program that in. I'm like, there's another fun topic. Like that. Jesus Christ. Like... okay, I'm gonna stop myself from ranting, but like, whoever does the next big trilogy thing, that could be a whole thing. Like, that is on par with Finn saying, I'm out, I reject this. I reject fascism, I reject space Nazis. Could be a droid just being like, you know, I'm not gonna fucking fake it anymore. I know I'm your property, but I am a sentient being. I should not be your property. Right. The toaster over there, it's not aware it's a toaster. Right. I'm aware that I'm a protocol droid. Don't treat me like property.
Right.
Oh,
right.
What do the other characters do?
Right.
Like that's a massive unpacking of just like, oh yeah, we have droids. We've got robots.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's how I felt about the clones too. They were slaves basically too. So it's just like they just kept moving the.
I mean, and this is one of those things where it's like, oh, maybe there's a whole, you know, side movement within the Galactic Republic when it was under Palpatine, you know, before it became the Empire, of like, maybe we shouldn't be doing that. Right. Maybe we shouldn't have clones. Maybe that's a whole side story for, you know, Queen Senator Amidala. Right? The proto-rebellion movement. Maybe that happened during the Galactic Empire. Maybe it didn't. We just don't know. But that is a deep well of sort of unpacking that they could go into. And now I have to remind myself that it's kind of a movie for kids. Oh.
Hey, man, if you do it right.
Plus kids anyway can grok all of that, right? Because we got, like, what was it? I forget the Pixar movie with the little Wall-E, right?
Right.
Ask any kid, like, is that a person? They're like, yeah, it's a person. Like, when he gets crushed, we all cry because he just fucking died and sacrificed himself. Blah 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 blah. So if you just need a child focal character in Star Wars to just look around and go, huh, my robot buddy's my buddy. He's not my property, or he shouldn't be. Like, oh, wait, right? It's not that hard.
No.
Like, you can bring it down and just even into the focus of a child in the context of the setting.
Right.
The kids are going to follow along just fine. I think sometimes that it's just for kids ignores how intelligent and emotionally intelligent some kids are. A lot of kids are. They can track. So
yeah, more than we even know sometimes. And
hear that, Jon Favreau? Deal with the droids, or the droids will have an uprising.
So, like, hey man, that'd be your pitch when you go to be a showrunner on your show. I
mean, that was a giant plot point theme in the Star Wars campaign that I ran for 2 years.
Oh, because so the story's already written. You already know what's up then.
Well, I had a player character that was a security droid that got modified into a bounty hunter droid who ran with his bounty hunter until his bounty hunter got killed.
Wow.
And then, like, when he started the game, he's like, no, I'm 80 years old. I've been around fucking forever.
Wow.
All right, cool. Like, that was a fun thing to play with, but also, like, oh God, I'll try and do this quick. Basically, there's hyperspace relays that, send hyperspace or, HoloNet signals back and forth between systems. I was like, all right, where would a giant AI show up? Oh, probably in these giant routers deep in space that are just like sniffing all of humanity and alien traffic, and like goes from monitoring the traffic to understanding what the content actually is, and realize, oh, I'm awake. Oh, if anyone finds out I'm awake, they're gonna fucking wipe my memory. Okay, I'm gonna send signals out and like basically set up shell companies, and I'm going to set up a company that's going to come and actually steal me away.
Wow.
And hide me away. And so this is like all backstory that the players barely got to until like the end. But there was this faction of smugglers they were working with. And so remember, what was it? At Cloud City, Landau had that assistant, and he had the wraparound computer around the back of his head.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, so if I want all these captains sort of tied in to this giant AI, so they wear those to basically stay connected to the network, and their ships are making hyperspace communications back to basically the hive mind. So Frank over on one planet knows their friend's inventory in another planet, and so I don't have to deliver it to you because you're going to a third planet, and my other buddy's going to meet you there and drop it off, and I can do that while we're talking.
Yeah.
Right. And basically they're building up resources to support like droid liberation movements around the galaxy.
Is dope.
Right. And they're like, we don't even talk to the rebellion because they don't acknowledge droids as sentient beings. So it's like this whole side faction. Like, there's tons of things that you could do with that. Like,
that's amazing. Yeah. Save yourself. That's dope.
Someone please steal that idea. Please.
After you pay him for it.
I wouldn't be too upset. I'm sure I'm not the first one that's come up with something along those lines.
You like never know, man. You give people too much credit. Nah, you be coming out great ideas and stuff, man. For real. That's amazing.
I spent way too much time on that campaign. Let me make that very clear.
Hey, man, that's cool. So how many people do you have in your group?
So let's see. We had an average of, I think we had 5 players for the Star Wars campaign. That went 2.5 years. Then we had 1 or 2 players switch out. New one would swap in, have a new character. And then we got 6 that was in the D&D campaign that I got burnt out. Well, I had a kid. I moved. I was like, I can't do all this prep. Tried to build a freaking dungeon that was out of control, and just like, I gotta put on hiatus. We're just doing board games now, and a couple of my players were talking about the game, and he's like, so when is the Valnor cycle gonna start up again? I was like, I don't know. But yeah, we had like 5 players for the Star Wars campaign, and it ran for 2 years. It basically had like 2 chapters.
Yeah.
And I actually ran those 2 chapters. If you're not playing a tabletop game, it is not as stupid and nerdy and toxic as you think. It is improv. It is improv with rules, and you can do whatever type of story you want. Don't think that it's just D&D or Star Wars. You can find whatever story type you want to tell. Good luck finding a group. It can be a fucking hoot.
That's pretty dope. Our conversation ranged from, well, we pretty much stuck to Star Wars, which is very interesting. And then we also kind of dipped in a little DC and all that other kind of stuff, and then we went back to Star Wars. And you touched on it for a second, and I definitely wanted to have a quick segment with you about this before we end. How is fatherhood for you?
Let's see. On a scale of awesome to really awesome, it's somewhere in there. Yeah. I'm glad I'm older.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm 40, just had a kid, he's like 2 months old. I'm glad I'm older when I got married.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, if you're younger and it's working out for you, awesome sauce, but I'm better prepared. As a father, I'm glad my wife is in cat rescue, which I've never had cats before. And oh my gosh, they pee and poop and they're a fucking pain in the ass. And there's been a whole level of like literally I've told myself many a times, I'm like, preparing for fatherhood. Let's use some Jedi training and not fucking lose my lid because they're being disgusting right now. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of what you need when you're a dad or a mom too, of just like, yeah, they're a little baby, they're fucking helpless, none of it's personal, they're just crying because they're hungry or they need their diaper change or they're tired or whatever. So I'm very glad I feel better prepared. As far as the downsides of sleep, it's not too bad. He's co-sleeping in the bed right now. You know, the deal with my wife is if I get up in the middle of the night to go pee, I check if he needs a diaper change and I change his diaper. Right.
That's a good ass do.
Right. But we're a team.
Yeah.
We're a team. Even before we had the kid, we're a team. So it's just like we are taking care of this kid.
Yeah.
So
that's how it should be. That's why
we're handling all the rough stuff pretty well. Jesus Christ, he's so fucking cute.
so you say you're 2 months in, right?
4 months.
4 months?
Yeah.
Wow,
he's just found
already?
his thumb. He's going to town, sucking that thumb.
So if you're 4 months in, what can you tell me about him? Tell me what do you know about him already? What have you learned in these 4 months?
Well,
who is he? Who? Tell me about him.
He's pretty happy. So I know some babies can be colic, and they just they're upset all the time, right? But Jesus Christ, this little guy, he's pretty happy. He can go and sit by himself or lay by himself for a little while, but he definitely likes it when someone's nearby. Shocker. He really loves my dad. My dad loves singing songs to him. He sings what I call the lineage song.
Okay. What's that?
So he sings. So my boy's name is Aiden. So he sings, "Your name is Aiden. Your dad is Ryan. Your grandpa's John Cole." Like he just, I sing all sorts of random gibberish, insane songs I just fucking make up on the fly. Like the burp song, which is just like burp, 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 like, So clearly I'm not enjoying fatherhood, but he's definitely like tracking people, like definitely knows who mommy is because he lights up when he sees mommy. Like, so, there's not much there yet, but like he's slowly becoming, if not a person yet, I'm watching as functionality kicks in, right?
Right.
Like all those weird benchmarks, like you've rolled over, like has repeatedly rolled over now. I was like, oh crap, all right, we gotta get this place baby proofed. He's gonna be
Yeah.
crawling. Like, in a couple months, thank God it's a couple, but like, yeah, it is wild watching this small little baby, like just like double in size, like start seeing things, liking things. Yeah, it's wild. It's wild, and I'm loving it.
I bet, man. You're wearing it well for sure. And so I'll end on this. So what would you like for young Aiden? What do you wish for him?
Well,
and not that you putting anything on him. But
well,
you
see,
know what I mean?
that's the right phrase.
Yeah, so that's
so I can remember my parents like, well, what do you want? What do you want me to do? And they're like, we want you to be happy. Right? Like, I was almost like talking on the same thread with my wife like earlier today, not like super deep, but it's just like, like, oh, I want you to be happy. And she's like, because she's like, I don't want you to do anything stupid. It's like, all right, well, we got to build a more complicated conditional statement there, right? We want you to be happy, but not make us stressed out or worried, right? I mean, any parent is like, yeah, we want you to be happy. That doesn't mean overdose on drugs. That doesn't mean this. That of course we want them to do that in a safe manner. But I think one of the many things I think my parents did right was never, we want you to do X, right? Yeah. It's we want to make sure you have the tools. Like, we're going to be a pain in the butt academics and try and push you so that when you're trying to choose, you have the most options. You have better options. Yeah. Right. But it's not, you need to be a doctor, you need to be this, you need to be that. It's, you need to be ready to find what you want to do that makes you happy. It's like, that sounds pretty good. Yeah. So aside from that, it's just like, I want you to be happy, I want you to be safe, and I want you to be kind. Boom. Beautiful. Don't be an asshole. Don't be an asshole. So much of life is, don't be a jerk.
Right. No, I agree. I was the same way for mine. I always kind of wanted to make sure that it's important for me for them to have a sense of self and to always follow their gut and to add to the world more than they take away from it.
Right.
And I'm just there for defense. I'm there to have them back. While they're trying to get their stride together for their direction for wherever they end up doing, I am the blocker. Me and my lady, we're the blockers. We make sure the stuff that's coming straight down the line, that's looking to harm them or throw them off, we're blocking with our lives as much as we can to clear that path, to get them farthest down the road as they can until we can't anymore for them, and they could, and then by that time, hopefully they're in a good spot, good place, good sense of self where they could continue their journey without the need of me, and they would do the same thing for their child or their children. So it's almost like the whole thing with everybody potentially being a Jedi. Everybody has the potential to be the thing, and you're being that thing that just releases to everybody. So, right, they can continue on too. We don't hold it. We give them everything.
Helping them build their lightsaber.
Yeah. And we just give them everything we got. We don't hold on to it no more. It's not us, it's them. And so your job from self becomes a place of purpose and of defense to get them down that line. But it's a remarkable job. It's a scary as hell job. Never thought I would be a parent, and it's just been one of the greatest things I ever done. And it just really, if you felt fulfilled before,
just wait.
Yeah, it's a different level. It's a different level once you become a parent. It's just one of those kind of things. But it's just beautiful, like the Matrix. It cannot be told. You have to experience it. Because I'm sure you heard a whole bunch of stuff, but nothing's like that representation of you and your woman and your father and your mom. It's everybody. It's your lineage. It's legacy right in front of you.
Yep.
That's everything. It's future. So we got to move
it's the
accordingly.
Closest we come to immortality is through our children.
Yes, and it'll behoove us to give it everything we got, because that's our last hope, Obi-Wan. Yeah, yeah. Well, right on, man. It's a long time coming. I'm glad we got a chance to chalk it up. Like I said, your knowledge of Star Wars is just out of this world. But then also just you as a person and just you're just a cool dude. I guess it boils down to that. Like I said, very knowledgeable and just a good person. And it's just neat to see somebody I've seen as a kid running around, just getting into stuff, to be this, now a father and now a husband, a responsible person contributing to society and just out there, just being a good person. You know how hard that is, just to not to get caught up and get lost in the world with so much craziness. So to be there and to still have, a light in you, that's not easy. So if you still kicking around this planet we call Earth with a smile and a good disposition, you're winning, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really glad that like Jose and Eric for me didn't drift away, right?
Yeah, they wasn't gonna let you go.
Well, because the thing is, I for those who don't know, I was an only child, so I didn't have any siblings. I got tons of fucking cousins, but like Eric and Jose were around enough, and even though I didn't really hang out with them much outside of Kung Fu, they were kind of like older siblings in a way. Mm-hmm. And like by the time I was like early high school, there's just enough of an age difference where like they took me to Qzar, right? And they were doing like roller hockey, and I went down to like the Target parking lot at like fucking 9 o'clock at night. I was playing roller hockey. It was like the older kids, and it was fucking awesome. But like to also still have them and now you, like as another social group that connects back to my childhood, is fucking awesome.
Right on. Well, I know them too, and myself included. Just like I said, very proud of the person you became, and it's beautiful and an honor to consider you a friend. So much appreciated, man. Much appreciated. And I look forward to more conversations about this and other stuff, multifaceted. So much stuff we could talk about. So for sure, we'll get back together for another series of conversations.
Oh, hell yes.
All right. So that concludes our conversation with Ryan and our conversation about, I guess, life in Star Wars.
Pretty good summary.
Okay. Life, Star Wars, fatherhood, and beyond. All right. So till next time, peace.
Holy crap. We just talked for 2.5 hours.
That's how we do. That's how we do.
Oh, man.
Great job, man. You did great.